everybody. This is Brian for Break It Down Security. About 2 weeks ago, I went to a conference called Source Seattle. It's a really great little conference going on. Very intimate. There was some red and blue team talks. There was some career building talks. Ways to help yourself become more focused, and even a little bit of discussion on how to meditate properly, which was interesting. They had some panels on how to help your career, and how you should basically navigate the waters, like we had talked about with Ben Johnson last week. So, full disclosure, the content you're hearing was due to me being given a ticket to attend. I asked Rob, the organizer, who you'll hear on the first talk here, for a ticket, and he was more than happy to oblige me. So, I was, in fact, comped for the conference, but, I was more than happy to do the audio anyway, even if I wasn't comped. I was expecting to buy a ticket anyway. So the first people you'll hear is Chip McSweeney and, of course, Rob, the organizer of the event. We did a talk with several other people, including Rob Fuller, Mubix, who did a pre-conference training on Metasploit. So hope you enjoy it. It's about an hour and a half, but it's all good content, and we hope you enjoy. So we're at Source here, and I'm talking to Rob, who is one of the organizers of Source.
I'm the organizer of Source.
Right on. The organizer. Okay.
I'm the owner of the company. And
right on. Okay.
I have some volunteers that help me very much, but I'm the guy that.
Right on. So for the rest of the world, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Rob Sheen. I'm the CEO and founder of Big Brain Security, and a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to take over the Source conference, and I took it.
Okay. So how did you get into the InfoSec community, and how did you get to where you are today?
That's a good question. So I started actually as a developer a long time ago, 27 years ago or so. And so the first half of my career I was a builder, and then around 98 I shifted to security and became a breaker, and did that for a while. And I was actually one of the early guys at Stake. And I got the opportunity in that time to work with some of the best and scariest people I've ever met, and learned a lot of things. And in the course of that, I worked on a bunch of things, application security, architecture reviews, code reviews, a little bit of penetration testing, worked on some security tools, wrote a version of LoftCrack, actually was on the development team that became Veracode for a year before they became Veracode. But then I'd kind of done all that and I was bored, and I was like, all right, what next? So I decided, I want to try training. So I got into the training group. And that was right around when we got acquired by Symantec. So I did that for a couple of years, then spun off and created a company called SafeFlight. And that had about a 7-year run, and we did e-learning and instructor-led training. And then after I left them, I decided to just kind of hang out and do nothing for a while, and I did that. It was great. And then when I decided to do this, I was like, all right, well, how can I take this to the next level? So I wanted to basically take instructor-led training and turn it into really high impact, high value seminars and workshops, things like, threat modeling boot camps and teaching the managers how to do stuff for once. And so trying to solve problems that people weren't particularly solving well. So when I had the opportunity, I actually helped start the conference back in 2008 with the original founders. And then in 2014, they wanted to go off and have kids and do other things. And I had the opportunity to take it over. So I did.
Okay.
And since then, I've been trying to incorporate some of the elements of what I've been doing the last dozen years into the conference.
Yeah. So this is my first Source conference. I found out about you guys last year. How many years have we been doing it in Seattle?
In Seattle, I think this is probably the 4th or 5th one.
Okay. How has it changed from its inception? You said 10 years ago. This was started as the whole series of conferences, Boston, Dublin, and now and Seattle for 10 years. So how's it changed?
So, well, it's actually, we've kept pretty close to our mission. The original idea was business and security kind of coming together, and we still are that. It's really meant to be a conference where it's not just a hacker conference, it's not just a CISO conference, it's really meant to be a little bit of both. So it's like one part hacker conference, one part CISO conference, and since I've taken it over, I've added a third element, which is personal development and growth and career development for people. And so now we always have a career track, and we try to do things that are a little different, like we always now on the main stage have lightning talks and the networking, speed networking.
Yeah, I loved that. That was fun. That last night, it really got people talking, so it was excellent.
Yeah, so my whole theory is if we can get the various groups that normally have communications issues together under one roof and actually give them nice, easy ways to talk to each other, it kind of breaks the ice and keeps things, keeps it real, you know?
Good morning. Okay, so if somebody wanted to come to Source and speak, what kind of talks are you looking for in particular? Or are there anything in particular, or is the sky's the limit?
Well, there are certain things we like. So anything that's InfoSec related is at least worth we take a look at it. But I love case studies, business case studies, real world stuff where people are solving actual problems and then teaching other people how to solve real problems. I love that stuff. Anything like that is going to give you an advantage. We do still try to have, a handful of really good technical talks. So, if it's as long as it's something that's fairly practical and something that can be used, like the really academic talks, sometimes we'll throw a few of those wild cards in there, but that's not primarily the point of the conference. We try to have things that are usable by people, so when they walk away, they actually can take something back to their job, and even if it's just one little nugget of wisdom.
Sure. Yeah, I've been very pleased with the talks. It's a different. It's not like I go to DerbyCon and everybody's like, oh, the LobbyCon is epic there, and then the talks are like blah. Well, they're not blah, but they're like secondary to the LobbyCon. Here, I enjoy the talks. I've actually gone to more talks here, I think, than I did at DerbyCon, ironically enough. But I love the talks that was given. There was one about how intelligence professionals have trouble talking about their jobs to other people and the trauma they can cause from those kinds of things. Which I found interesting, and then of course stuff that you can take back immediately to your organization if you are a third party or you're handling third party. Peter Gregory's talk he's from Optiv. I mean, a lot of this stuff is stuff you can take back to your organization and just start on immediately. Like he was talking about the questionnaires and how to change and make changes. I loved that, and then. A lot of these talks are very actionable for the blue team folks, and there was even some red team stuff. I didn't get to see the OSINT talk, but so you when is B-Sides Boston? Because I know that one's coming up soon.
Source Boston is in next April. It's last week in April. We already have dates set, and we're already already have sold a bunch of tickets. So that one's going to be our 10th one that we've run in Boston. Right. So that's going to be a big one. So hoping to max that one out.
Are these talks are these a lot of the same talks will be at that group, or do you ask for a call for papers for each one, or?
There's a call for papers for each one, and some of the keynotes are hand selected, and we kind of travel around. So the whole idea for me is I have 3 events right now, and it's an opportunity to, rather than just have 3 separate events, it's more like I start a conversation at the beginning of the year, and I bring that conversation with me from conference to conference. And as we expand and have more events, I totally expect to have more events. I can now basically take that conversation and move it around the world. And we try to be the anti-echo chamber in a lot of ways. We try to not just be a bunch of security geeks talking about security geek stuff, although they're all here too, but it's not just that. It's trying to bridge those gaps and get that information out to people that are beyond our core group. Okay.
And you gave, this is also a con that has training before, so you gave, I got some audio with Rob Fuller, who will be after this bit of audio, doing Metasploit basics. There was another training as well, I think you gave it?
Yeah, so attached to the conference now, there's a couple core trainings that I do, and they're basically, again, they're things that I think are important, and so I'm trying to travel them around with the conference. So I have InfoSec Train the Trainer, which is essentially taking all the things I've learned about how to teach security over the last dozen years or so, boiling it down into a one-day class and teaching it back to people, because I think that teaching it back is important, and getting more people spun up on how to actually communicate this stuff clearly and effectively is really, to me, that's like one of the biggest parts of the solution long term, is teaching other InfoSec people how to communicate better. Yeah. And so that one's I'm really passionate about. And then the other one I have that I bring around with the conference is application security risk for managers. And so we're still spinning that one up and getting those seats filled. But that's the course that's meant to be taught to your boss. It's basically, for years teaching developers, I'd say the number one question I would get is, this is really great stuff, but my boss isn't going to let me do it. Will you please tell my boss, please?
Yeah.
And so I finally just created the course to teach their boss. And then we always attach other kinds of trainings as well that we think are interesting. So Rob's Metasploit class was really good. I actually sat through part of it, and it was fantastic.
So, okay, so you're training the trainer. Give me an example of something that you suggest that to help enhance existing training. Where are people falling short, or where? I mean, obviously it's not easy doing the annual security training because people are like, oh, I just click through the flash, and then answer the stupid questions, and I'm good.
Right.
How do you help the trainers be more effective at training? Can you give me an example?
Sure, I can give you lots of examples. So. First of all, the e-learning thing you mentioned is interesting because one of the reasons I shifted out, my last company, and half of what we sold was e-learning, and we made it a point to build some of the best e-learning we could. Sure. But it really annoyed me that a lot of customers would use it incorrectly. They would use it as the one and done checklist item. They would, once a year, people would check the box, they'd walk through the training, and then that's it. And that's not how human beings learn. So with the trainer, I try to, it's not just about training trainers, it's about training anybody that wants to just present and communicate better. So, like for example, I do a section on how to give a technical demo. And I walk through, here's how you communicate the information in a way that's, non-threatening and simple and effective in a way that everybody in the room gets it. So my mantra is no student left behind, no participant left behind. Like a lot of technical talks I see, or just when people are communicating technical information, you can tell they're losing half the room. And so it's not necessary for that to be that way. There are little tricks you can do to make sure everybody's getting it and make sure that it's clear without, lowering the quality of the information you're presenting.
Do you also go into content creation as well, or how to create videos, or how to, make training that is interesting to people as well?
Sure. We don't really do so much about the video part, but people do ask me about, how do I use PowerPoint more effectively, for example, and generally my answer is, well, stop using it. But if you're going to use PowerPoint, instead of like having, my wife is actually a professional public speaker as well, and she refers to those slides that have like really dense data on them.
All the text, yeah.
She calls those slideguments.
Slideguments.
And so basically, like, stop having slideguments. They're not, like, if you put up a giant slide behind you with all kinds of words on it, guess what they're focused on? They're focused on the words in the slide, and they're not listening to you anymore. So you've unintentionally split their focus from what you're actually saying. So I usually tell people, if you want to have that kind of content, give them a handout or give them a link to a handout for later. And so those are some examples.
Yeah, one of the tips I'd always heard was no more than 4 points, no more than 6 words in each point. That's what I did when I was in the Navy, because I saw a lot of the wall of text stuff. It kind of just went in both ears and out the other. So you can come in. Don't worry about being quiet or noisy. It's cool. You can be on the podcast if you want.
Yeah, I was doing that yesterday, wasn't I?
You were, yes.
Well,
yes.
I sat out there for a while and then actually started to lose my voice. So today's probably a better day.
All right. Yeah, this is one of the speakers. This was Chip McSweeney from OpenDNS. You gave the talk on, the DGA stuff, domain generating algorithms.
Yes.
You want to sit down? I mean, I'm sorry,
Sure.
You just walked in literally, so I mean, you're. If you're a hot mess, I'm sorry. Oh, it's a little rainy outside. Okay, so you gave a talk yesterday on malware and domain generating algorithms. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
All right. Well, the DGAs, or domain generation algorithms, or generating, they kind of work as a way that a piece of malware can communicate back to its command and control, or phone home, if you will. And it does so by using an algorithm to generate domains which may or may not change with some new piece of information that it gathers on a particular day, like the day or the time of day, or something completely random like a stock price or weather in a particular city or something like that. And it uses that to generate something that would appear to be random, so you have difficulty blocking it, but in doing so, it makes sure that it can always phone home. So my talk was on basically just one of the many ways that I use to prevent malware from being able to do so, and catching it in the act while it's trying to phone home.
So the whole idea is predicated on the malware knows malware generates the domain keys and then it expects to have that .ru or .com here. So it's like on the other end, the malware creator is also running the same algorithm and creating the domains as needed. So there's no communication. There's no like, okay, this piece of malware knows to contact one of these 10 domains. It just goes, okay, well, I can't access that one anymore. I'm going to go to the next iteration.
Right. So malware authors know that at some point their site will be shut down or otherwise blocked. And in doing this domain generation algorithm, they know that on any particular day, they might be able to register a completely different domain on a different IP somewhere else that they can still gather all that information that they've just stolen from you.
Okay.
So it's pretty neat, but it is pretty devastating sometimes when you think you have something blocked and you really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So this goes beyond like when malware was using like Blogspot or like Blogger to do command and control. They realized that it didn't. It was easy to block those. So, are you still seeing this in a lot of malware?
Oh yeah. A little less now, because frankly we've just gotten so good at finding these things. We are still seeing different, very unique ways, like comments in blogs being used, or just very obscure things that just don't seem. They're just out of the box, and every day we're working to combat a different approach for blocking those. So,
okay.
But there are multiple vectors that can be used for phoning home, and at some point it's usually a domain name.
Okay. So you eat your own dog food on this. You see a lot of this obviously working at OpenDNS. Do you use it to block and protect organizations from this?
Yes, of course. Anything that we can identify as malware immediately goes on the block list, and as soon as it's blocked, from our infrastructure, it is cloud-based, so we block one, everyone has that update immediately. It doesn't have to be pushed to a user, so it's a lot faster in that sense.
Very cool. So how did you get involved with Rob? Have you known about Source for a while, or?
Well, my first Source event was in Boston of this year, or earlier this year, and it was actually recommended to me by one of my other coworkers who spoke here in a previous year. So
nice. Okay.
it's been great.
Cool.
I love it.
So Rob, there's B-sides, there's Black Hats, there's DEF Cons, there's Tour Cons, there's all kinds of stuff. For those people that are deciding to go to a convention, how would you sell Source to those folks?
Sure. So ours is kind of the main difference I see between a lot of those other ones is, and those are all great conferences, so nothing bad about them, but they tend to be more technically focused. And ours, we do have some, as I said, great technical content, but it's not just great technical content.
Yeah.
We also have really good business content. We have really good people content, and we try to blend it all together. And even doing things like the speed networking, just getting all those people into one room, getting them to talk to each other and do fun things, and then go back, kind of spill it off and go do the various talks people want to do. And so I've always been a big fan of, like, my threat modeling course that I do. I don't just invite the architects when I have a company that wants to do threat modeling bootcamp. I actually invite the architects, the developers, the managers, QA folks. I tell them, invite everybody involved in the development cycle, because I really believe in cross-pollinating knowledge. And to me, this is a conference where we cross-pollinate knowledge. So to me, that's a big difference between this one and a lot of the other ones. I don't know any other one that does that the way we do it.
Very cool. Chip, what was your experience with Source, and would you recommend it to speakers who were looking for a place to have a talk or to share the knowledge?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, what Rob said is actually the reason I am back for the second time and intend to keep coming. A lot of the conferences you go to are very technical, and yes, my talk is technical, but when you sit in a technical seat, when that's all you do all day, you start to forget to interact with other people and do things that really I think, make you a better employee than sitting there and working, your heart, mind, and soul out.
Yeah.
So being able to see these different perspectives keeps you more focused, if that makes sense. And I really enjoy the training. So,
yeah, one thing I've noticed is some of the things. I mean, I've taught people around the world this stuff for a long time, and I've noticed that I started teaching around 2003, and up till now, the world has gotten better at security, but the reality is that some people have, but a lot of people have not, and we tend to forget that those of us that have been doing this for a long time, it's easy to slip into that mindset of, oh, here's the state we're in today, but in reality, I go into customers all the time that are still doing things the way they were doing them in the year 2000. It's just that they never got the memo.
Yeah.
So we've left a lot of people behind. So to me, this is a way to help bridge that gap and help them catch up. So
That's cool. I'm sorry, I'm keeping you from opening remarks, aren't I? Start at 8:30.
it's rainy out today, so I was going to give people a few extra
Oh,
minutes.
good. Well, I left like 20 minutes early, and I got here about 7 a.m. So I've been like watching people dodge raindrops. So, well, that's great. I mean, so you said B-Sides Boston is in April. Shit. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. We'll fix that in post or whatever post is for me.
We do actually try to work with the B-Sides guys, but we are not B-Sides.
Yeah.
I love those guys. They're great.
Yeah, so Source Boston is in April. Source Dublin, which I would love to go to Dublin. It's coming up soon too.
Yeah, so Boston for next year's on the docket we have Boston is in April, Dublin is in June, and we'll probably do Seattle again around this time.
Okay.
It seems to be a pretty good time for it.
Is there a chance for a fourth source somewhere, like New Orleans or San Antonio?
There is a chance for
New Orleans, yeah.
There is definitely a chance for more source events. I definitely want to expand it out and spread the message more.
Sure, right on.
And there's actually the nice thing about where our events are, they tend to be kind of regional, but they're in reasonably large regional areas.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of technology. So Boston's a great place for that. Seattle's a great place for that. Dublin's a great place for that. There's a lot of places where there's just hotbeds of technology and security where we can bring those kinds of same groups together and bring the message there. So
excellent.
Definitely, I don't want to disclose future plans just yet because I'm not ready to actually do it. But
no, that's cool.
We're getting close. There's going to be a couple more sources in the relatively near future, I believe.
So if you do, if you wanted to volunteer, is there ways to? I'm sure you wouldn't turn away a volunteer.
No, we love volunteers. Volunteers are great.
So you can always reach out to you and get on.
Yeah, I don't remember if volunteer at Source is active, but I'll make it active now. But
okay.
info at sourceconference.com always gets to us. So yeah, we definitely love volunteers.
Okay, and Chip, if somebody wanted to contact you about DGAs or Open DNS in general or the underpinnings of how the internets work, how would they go about doing so?
Well, so OpenDNS is a Cisco company, so my email address is not actually that easy to get to, but if you do find me via the OpenDNS engineering blog,
okay.
There are links to LinkedIn and my email and everything through there.
And you're on the Twitters as well?
Yes, I am on Twitter as Chip McMalware.
Chip McMalware, okay.
Yep.
Right on.
And I try to update it occasionally.
That's cool.
But I do respond, so.
All right. And Rob, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted more information about Source or if they just wanted to talk to you in general?
Sure. Sourceconference.com is the website, and we try to keep it relatively up to date. And we're on Twitter at SourceConf, so Source CONF, and that's an easy way to do it. Info at sourceconference.com always gets to us, and we can answer questions that way.
Excellent. All right, well, I guess we should get the second day started. Let's kick this pig. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining the show. And if you want to come on and talk about some DNS stuff, or if you've got some any more conference information, just let us know. We'll hook it up.
Great.
Right on. All right, thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So we're here again at SourceCon. It is Source, yes. I didn't screw it up this time. Great. With one of our keynote speakers, Masha Sadova. Yeah, man. If you ever listen to the show, I do mangle names, so it's kind of a growing thing with me. So, you gave a talk on changing security culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, expanding your blue team by creating a security culture.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, first, for people who don't know you, please tell the world a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I've always had a fascination with security. I love the idea of good guys versus bad guys, and having to continue doing something different every day because your work environment and threat landscape is changing. So I was super interested in this. And one of the things that really drew me in this field was how people interact with security, both from an offense standpoint, like social engineering, but also defense. How do we enable people to secure organizations as best they can? So I've been with Salesforce for going on to 5 years now, and I've built a team that's responsible for creating security culture for our employees, for our developers and engineers, and also for our customers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of what you hear.
Everybody's got. Oh wow.
That's
You weren't
Mr.
joking.
Fuller again. Yeah. So you hear people say that
Hacking computers and
if we
lunch.
stop if we train people and we only stop 20% of the attacks, and if even one gets through, then mission failed.
We're done. Yeah.
Yeah, and you talked during your talk. You said that if you send 10 emails, you're almost guaranteed.
You're guaranteed. You have like near 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So, is it worth training people if even one person clicks on it, it's a bad thing, and you fail?
So there's two things around this I want to talk about. First of all is what's the value of training. The second thing is if someone's clicking on it. So what I talked about in my talk was that you should plan for failure because it's going to happen, and it's naive to think no one's going to click on it, or you're going to get to a place where your clicking is manageable because someone's always going to click, which means someone's going to infect your computer. So start planning for failure because that's actually your reality. And the way you do that is by looking at what happens when an employee clicks. And if you can get them comfortable with saying, I made a mistake, can you help me out? You start reducing the dwell time for an attacker in your network. Your incident response team starts looking in places that they know they need to be looking and cleaning up in potential infections. And if you can train your people to report things without clicking, which is the best scenario, your incident response team now starts getting information about stuff that your technology stacks missed. And so you've essentially trained your employees to be a human intrusion detection system.
Yeah.
Now what's particularly interesting about that is you're talking about human beings here and their relationship to failure.
Yeah.
And how do you get it comfortable for them to fail? And that's a super, that was a question that was really interesting for me when I started. And I got to look into behavioral science and behavioral economics and what drives and motivates us as people, and realize that we need a positive association with something in order to be able to counterbalance the negative association with something, in order to have a good, successful relationship. In fact, studies show that you need 5 positive associations to every 1 negative. So if you take a look at how often security teams interact with other employees, it's usually rotate your password, you violated this policy, you're not wearing your badge visibly. They're all negative, right? Very rarely do we have positive conversations, let alone 5 to every 1 negative. So really being mindful about how we positively interact and creating opportunities for those. And what that can look like is a simple thank you email when somebody reports, and CCing their manager and letting them know what a security-minded professional that they have on their team. Or if someone checks your badge behind them when they walk in, say thank you so much. That was great. I appreciate you being mindful about who walks on this floor. Or when people patch on time, say thank you. Do you know all these vulnerabilities that you just prevented from having effect in our organization? Way to go.
Yeah.
You're doing 20% better than the industry or your fellow peers. And that kind of got me thinking about how can we create a full system around this using gamification, leaderboards, points, and recognition.
Okay, so you had a leaderboard roughly based on some proprietary Disney property that we, using masters and
Don't know what you're talking about. Security champions. Security champions.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yep.
So this wasn't really overly expensive to implement either. It seems like a lot of it was electronic. It was badge based. That was found on profiles on your profiles for your
Page,
employees.
yeah.
What was some of the other things that you had with regard to gamification? Did you use gift certificates or anything like that?
So a couple things around here. When you create gamification, you have to be really clear about the behaviors you want to reward and recognize. There's a really famous, not in my world, it's famous, case study where it went really wrong called the virtual whip, where Disney decided to gamify Disney resorts decided to gamify how fast their staff was cleaning up rooms in a leaderboard, and what people just essentially called it was like a virtual boss standing over there, and only the top 5 people were seen as doing a good job, and everyone else was slacking. And that's not the right use of gamification. So being really clear about what motivations, what behaviors you really want to motivate, incentivize, and defining them clearly. All right, if you motivate developers to close bugs, maybe you're also then indirectly motivating them to open more bugs so then they can close it. So being mindful of, do you want to close other people's bugs, or is it remediation time? Just thinking through the whole ecosystem. But from a rewards and recognition standpoint, there's a couple of things that we as human beings are motivated by, and these are just intrinsic behaviors. So extrinsic is something like money or even punishment, something external to you. Intrinsic is something that you find of personal, meaningful value internally. So things like competition is great, like I won. I find this to be really resonant with people in sales, right? Or execs. Self-expression, like, look, I built this thing. Let me show you how it works. That's big for a lot of engineers and developers, and just being able to show that they accomplish something with amongst their peers. Achievement, so just like a reward, or like a certificate of achievement. I've had some cultures that means a lot more than others. So, our employees in India love getting certificates, where a certificate means a lot less to our employees in California. Status is another one. Getting an elite parking spot for a month, for example. So the airline industries have figured this out, like you can board on the red carpet versus the blue carpet a few minutes early. That's a perfect example of gamification. So money doesn't actually have that much of a role in this, because assuming all of your employees have a decent pay, what they're going to do is start doing a calculation with something called market norms, and say, my value of time is worth this much. You're giving me a $50 gift certificate. I'm too busy. I have other things to do, so I won't play your game. But I can't buy that parking spot. I can't buy an email to my boss. So all of a sudden, you're using different type of value called social norms that have a totally different economic motivation for us. And so I would actually highly recommend taking money out of the equation and using things like an exclusive run of t-shirts for a given campaign to be able to motivate people. If you don't have money for programs like this, honestly, a thank you email is going to go a long way, because again, people can't buy that stuff. So using that in your gamification system is good.
Could other things like when evaluation time comes up, hey, this person, rooted out a phishing campaign that could have cost our company millions of dollars, or those are kinds of things you can add to that. Are you guys at that point in the program where that actually adds weight to an evaluation?
We haven't yet. We've been able to show which of our managers have the greatest number of champions on their team, and so we can show that, but it would be great to be able to tie that into HR bonuses. So let's say if you have someone who is a certain level, they can get an additional bonus on top of it, right? That would be great. And if you can tie financial incentives like at an organizational level, that's a really great way of making it a permanent part of the culture and getting people really to focus on that. We haven't gotten there yet, because I find that for systems like that, you need it to be company-wide, really dependable, really sustainable. So obviously automation is a big part of that as well. Nice. Make sure every person who sends a phishing email gets an email in response, and it's all tracked. And so when you're actually tying people's ability to get money for it, you need to make sure you're distributing that evenly with transparency. And so there's some implementation that's going to happen in the back end, and that's something we're working on right now.
So you mentioned, you said sending 10 emails, you're almost guaranteed a 100% click rate. And then you broke it down by the person that clicks on that is going to have one of 3 behaviors. Either they didn't know they did something wrong by clicking on it, they didn't care that they clicked on it, or 3, they know they clicked on it, but they reported it, which is the important thing. So you're deputizing the employee in such a way as to become an additional data point for your IDS.
Yeah.
You mentioned human intrusion detection systems instead of host intrusion detection.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you've unwittingly deputized your users instead of actively doing it in your organization?
Yeah. So just expand a little bit more on that. The first category, if people don't know, they don't know. Like if they're going to get a phishing email, the way that I internally say it's like, I can't fix stupid, right? If they don't know, they're never going to know. And that's the reality of it, right? There's someone that's always going to click. The second one is, I don't know, or I clicked on something and it doesn't feel comfortable, but I don't want to get in trouble, right? Yeah. And that's where it's things like gamification, motivation, safety to fail will really start bringing those people over into the third category, which is, I did something wrong and I should do something about it, or I see something and I should say something. We've all heard this like around the TSA or like the subway. How often do we actually pick up the phone and do something? What's the difference in someone actually seeing something and choosing to take action on it? And what's the ecosystem around that? So how have I deputized it? Well, we send out phishing emails, and when people send us a report, we started by saying thank you, but we also emailed their manager, and we made it visible. We posted it on their profile, and we told people exactly why we were thanking them. We said, this person got an email. It was a phishing test, and they did the correct thing, which was report it. The impact of reporting did this for us. It was able to stop an attack that looked like, XYZ, or this phishing test could have led to this type of phishing attack. So people got to see, this is what good behavior looks like, and my company cares about it. We did some marketing and socialization around what email address we wanted people to email things, and we did have a see something, say something, but mostly just kind of a, hey, this is the correct email. The rest of it, we just reinforced when people did the right thing, and we showed people that this was the right behavior. And one of the key elements of behavior change is, instead of saying, don't do all of these things, because your mind will say, okay, I'm not supposed to do that, I'm not supposed to, but what am I supposed to do? And that's the cool part. You're like, this is what good looks like. If you give people more good examples of what to model, they'll do more of that. So showing what positive looks like instead of just listing out the negatives is a lot easier way of changing behavior, so people can start modeling what they're supposed to do.
So you whitelisted instead of blacklisted.
You got it. So we fish people, and when they did the right behavior, we thanked them visibly. And when they didn't, we followed up and said, just so you know, this is what the right behavior would have looked like.
Are the actions that you mentioned in your talk based on the level of trust that a person has in the organization, or with the organization, or with management? So a person who's, naturally maybe a little paranoid or a little mistrustful, or maybe they don't have, I wouldn't say a good relationship or something, but do you find that it's a level of trust with the organization, like salespeople would be more trusting of the company versus maybe a developer who, do you see that kind of thing? Can you break it down like that, or does it matter?
Surprisingly, when I found, when I did phishing tests, this is just going to be sample numbers, but
sure,
the ratio is the same. Our salespeople clicked on links, say, a really hard test 50% of the time. Mm-hmm. Our developers clicked on it 49% of the time.
Really?
So they were the second worst offenders, and I think it's because folks in technical roles have a certain element of arrogance around phishing. You must say, I won't ever get caught. I would totally know this is happening, and as it is,
sure,
I could stop it even if it did get infected. So it's a different mindset for different roles, but it's still that whole, hey, you did something you shouldn't have. But it's an important thing. One of the things that I talked about in my talk is to recognize that neither sales nor developers or anyone in your organization is going to be a security expert as your security experts.
Yeah.
And that's great, because you hire your marketing people to be excellent marketers and your salespeople to be excellent salespeople. They don't expect you to do great marketing work, so you shouldn't expect them as a security professional to do great security work.
Yeah.
What you need them to do is reach out to you as a security professional who has education in this, a degree or experience, and personally just way more motivation to get to the root cause of it, and has time and energy to investigate all the links and run it in a sandbox and all this other stuff. And so what we're doing is increasing collaboration and say, hey, I'm a salesperson. This is not my job, but I know someone whose job it is. And so let me just ask for help and let me as a security professional build that relationship so I can say, I will give you an answer in a timely manner so that if you do have decisions based on replying to this email you really feel like you need to, I'll get back to you in 20 minutes or however is a reasonable time frame for you. So you're increasing that collaboration.
So you mentioned during the talk your results and your testings and such that, people who tailor their fishes for salespeople or for developers, you may send a sales lead to a salesperson and they'll click on it 50% of the time. The developer is going to get, hey, here's a bug report, click on this link. Those skew the actual test results. So do you send the same fish to everybody to get the same metrics, or do you actually tailor your fishes, and does tailoring fishes actually hurt in the long run?
That's a great question. Yes and no. We do a variety of different tests, but at a high level, we basically do tests based on a variety of difficulty, say on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being incredibly easy, 5 being really difficult. And the higher up you go, the more tailored it is, not just to your role, but also to timing. So is it benefit season? Is it tax season? Geographies? Is it in a language that resonates with your company? How many spelling mistakes? Obviously, things like that. Is it addressed to you by name? Does it have context around your team or the work that you're doing? So it just depends on the difficulty level. And so what we've been trying to do is test difficulty like versus like. How do people respond to a level 1 test versus how do people respond to a level 2? Because what I've seen is if you just say, I fish people, I could send a really easy one and no one clicks on it, followed by a really hard one the next month where everyone will click on it. And it gives me no data around how educated, paranoid my employees are and how well my program is working.
Yeah, time of day, everything, yeah.
There's tons of factors in
Decision
there.
fatigue causes you to click, whereas sometimes you wouldn't.
Yeah. For example, the sales thing, like I could have a targeted thing sent to sales in California versus a targeted thing sent to Germany, and it doesn't matter because it's not the right language. Right. One doesn't matter as much as the other, or on the weekend, or at nighttime, and so there's so many other factors that go into making it seem legitimate and harder.
Near the end of the sales quarter where somebody might be more willing to click on
right,
something.
Right, yeah.
Right on. Well, so if people who are working on their own deputization programs and gamification programs wanted to get a hold of you, how would they go about doing so?
Yeah, you can send me an email at msadova@salesforce.com, or an even better way would be just to find me on LinkedIn, Masha Sadova, and send me a message. Happy to send you links, talks. I've done white papers. You can also follow me on Twitter at modmasha, MODMASHA, okay. And I post different articles around culture change and positive incentives, motivation, things like that. Yeah.
Right on. All right. Thanks for coming on the show.
So thanks for asking me all these awesome questions.
Pretty nice rig.
Yeah, this is my brand new toy. I was using a DR05, but it died. And so I figured when I was upgrading, I would simplify my audio setup at home for the podcast. So I got, external mic inputs, front end. So they're using something very similar here, so it's nice. So, of course, the voice you're hearing now is Rob Fuller at Mubix on Twitter, MUBIX. Do you come to Seattle a lot?
I don't, no.
Is it on purpose, or you just like the East Coast better?
No, I absolutely love the West Coast. I'm actually from the West Coast. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. What part?
Oregon.
Oregon, okay. Besides Portland is this weekend, so I wish
I've
I could have been to
never
that.
been to it. Look forward to it. Going to it sometime.
Yeah. So brings us to Source. You've done Source before?
I was an attendee at Source Boston once.
Okay. And they asked you to teach the class on Metasploit. So what was the level of instruction for this? Was it a basic Metasploit course?
Yeah. So Metasploit basics. We start from knowing what Metasploit is the pretty basic requirement for the class. Yes, you have to be able to operate a Windows VM. You have to be able to install a VM. You have to be able to get Kali Linux going, which is a bar, but it's not a high bar for most people in tech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you just teach them Kali VM with the Metasploit because it's easy to. It's already configured basically. You just have to set up the DB and.
Yeah. So what we do is we actually provide a pre-class setup so that we have the Git version of Metasploit installed by the time they get here.
All right.
So we want to teach the most up-to-date stuff. Kali Linux is a little bit behind, so we need to make sure that they have something that they can use with all of the things that we teach in the class.
Yeah. So you said about 10 people in your class. What was the level of knowledge for people that were learning the Metasploit stuff? Was it system admins? Was it everybody across the spectrum? Was it developers, that kind of thing?
In this class, we've had developers in our class. So me and Egypt teach the class normally, and originally developed by him. So all credit to him.
Yep.
And we teach the class at Black Hat USA, and that spans the gamut of different people who join the class. But for Source Seattle, we had a few defenders, some early year pen testers, but really just it was a mostly security related group of people.
Okay. So I've had a couple of people on the show from various pen testing organizations. We had Adam Crompton and Tyler Robinson from the Guardians, and I've talked to some other people, and they're no longer using Metasploit for pen test purposes.
Okay.
They're using like Cobalt Strike and with the beacons and such.
Sure.
Is Metasploit becoming dated?
So it really depends on who your targets are. So if you're targeting higher end organizations that have big SOCs and 24/7 and blue teams and have an internal red team or at least a team that tests them all the time, Metasploit still can do the job, but it's not as flexible with some of the C2 that is out there. So it doesn't currently have a DNS-based C2. And that's one of the downfalls of it. But it hands down is one of the best pivoting tools. So once you get a shell, once you have access, and it has, I think, 300 or some odd post modules that do all kinds of things. Now, Empire has a lot as well, but it's only Windows, right, for the most part. So you have Pi Empire that's doing stuff now, or Empire, PY, that's doing stuff now, and those other frameworks are doing good. However, what they lack currently, and there's, I think Empire 2 actually has this coming, is the ability to use actual tools. Like if I need to access a database, I can use a database client through Metasploit. Whereas with Empire or MPYER or RE, you couldn't do that, and they're fixing that. So Cobalt Strike does have that ability, and it's great for team-based stuff. And never going to knock Cobalt Strike. Mudge does a great job at it. But no, I really don't think that Metasploit's getting dated at all. A lot of the developers are working on it constantly and getting new feature sets all the time.
Yeah. No, I wasn't. I was not trying to dog Metasploit at all. My whole thought was that. Because I mentioned this to Tyler and Adam on the show, I was like, well, why would you go and, because they don't even go beyond Cobalt Strike. They even create their own, vulnerabilities and exploits and stuff. And I was like,
sure,
why go to all that trouble when things like Metasploit still work?
Yep.
Because you don't, like I've heard John Strand mention, it doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to work.
Yep.
And for the most part, Metasploit will get you where you need to go.
Sure.
So this is the same training you teach at Black Hat, and people could get it just by coming here. Okay, that's nice.
Right.
So is this something you guys are going to continue doing with Source, or?
Yeah, I believe so. So we have Metasploit Basics scheduled for Source Dublin in June.
Oh, that's nice.
I won't be able to make it for Source Boston, and I think that I honestly actually haven't asked Egypt if he wants to do Source Boston, so that might still be a possibility there. But yeah, so we're starting up with Source as well, trying to figure out where best to provide the training and see where we can get it done.
Okay. So if you had, what is your thought about Source? Because I've been here and I actually thought it was going to be bigger. This is way more intimate than I thought, which is a good thing for me. It reminds me of like an upscale B-sides.
Right.
I mean, you've got your professional development track, you've got your hacker track. I saw some DNS and OSINT techniques today. I saw a gentleman from OpenDNS talking about algorithms that domain generating algorithms. What kind of person could benefit from the courses and the stuff here at Source?
Sure. So Rob, and I'm going to butcher his last name, Chenye or Chenye, the guy who runs the conference, he actually describes it best. So it's where he's combining management with higher or even sometimes lower security professionals to make sure that they get the best of both worlds in the conference. So sort of like how ShmooCon has transitioned into more of in the last couple of years into a defensive conference. This is Source in itself is more of a management meets security standpoint.
Right on. Yeah, I definitely saw that. We I just got out of a talk from a gentleman from Optiv about managing third-party risk. So I mean, it does run the gamut. I mean, you're going to learn something if you come to these things, which is great. So you've been here for the class. Are you staying? Do you have any talks that you're interested in seeing the next couple days?
Honestly,
scheduled right over there.
Yeah. So there's So I'm not actually in the management level, so I don't talk to too many management. So those kinds of talks don't really do it for me. But evolving bug bounty programs is always going to be interesting for me because I feel that bug bounty programs are the way of the future in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Just making it so that there's less risk in organizations just because, hey, I can have hundreds of thousands of eyes on this thing, or at least 1,000 eyes on this thing, versus what XYZ pen tester from E&Y or wherever sees it. Sean Malone from FusionX, always a good presenter. So
that's good talk.
Yep.
He was on our show talking about that, so I look forward to introducing myself and catching up on updates from that. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, they all look pretty interesting. I just I'm mostly here to kind of learn more about the security aspects that go into more of a management mindset than learning management tools.
Sure, absolutely. And then, of course, with any good con, you've got your networking. There's going to be some networking afterwards. So
Sure.
I saw several Amazon developers. I saw some folks who were pen testers. Some folks I'm fairly certain I've never seen before, only at HushCon in the dark corners watching things go on. So it's really a whole gambit of people, and it's very interesting. So thanks for sitting down with me, Rob. Yeah. So that was Rob from Mubix here on Breaking Down Security. And we're clear. I have Mike with me. Mike, please introduce yourself to the world.
Hi, thanks. This is Mike Shima. I'm the VP of SecOps and Research at Cobalt.io. And today I'm going to be talking about evolving a bug bounty program. Provide some insights about what a public bug bounty might look like, a private bug bounty, and so avoiding some of the traps that you might find, or actually I should say instead, preparing for making it successful.
So this is beyond what a typical bug bounty would be like. You've already got one in place, but you need to make it better.
Yeah, it'd be both in the sense of I want to deploy, I want to start a bug bounty, and this is, ideas about what you should be prepared for, anticipate what comes in, what should the rules look like, what should the scope look like, as well as one of the things that I point out is that bug bounties are fantastic. They're great ways to find vulns, but they also require a lot of social management because you're dealing with anonymous researchers.
Yeah.
And you want to build a good relationship with that community because obviously you want to attract positive type of testing against your website and positive reputation rather than exploitation and malicious attacks against it. And even if you are running a bug bounty program, I hope to be able to offer some insight into ways of expanding it, ways of tying it into your security development process. Because I think that's one of the most important things is rather than just expecting that a bug bounty is there as a stopgap measure for deployed applications, it should really be something that's a feedback loop and improve that SDLC, improve everything from how developers are trained. Do they understand the nature of the bugs that are getting reported? As well as the automation. Can you create QA tests? Can you create regression tests for the types of vulns that are being found in a bug bounty program? So these are a bunch of different areas to touch on, and it can be quite a complicated process. But I hope to try to lift the lid off a little bit of that complication, or at least provide some insight in the ways of approaching that complexity in a bit of an ordered manner.
That's cool. So yeah, we did our show. We did a show recently with Gene Kim and Josh Corman on DevOps and integrating security into DevOps. So when you take bug reports, one, how hard is it to actually get a good bug report from a anonymous researcher?
So there's a couple things that make a good report. One of the things that I've found in the past is that you'll probably get, if you're lucky, you'll get about a 20% rate of valid reports that come in. Okay. So, and sometimes it can even be as low as 10%. So if you're getting 10 reports a day, only maybe 1 or 2 of them are actually going to turn into bugs that actually need to be fixed or that have security impact. Because unfortunately, a lot of it may just be noise. Yeah. It'll either just be someone who's cutting and pasting reports from a scanner and they haven't even tested if it's a false positive or not, or they're reporting on something perhaps trivial like you're missing an X-frame options on something on a domain that's intended to be framed for that reason. So unfortunately, there can be a lot of noise. There's some tactics to try to reduce that noise, and one of the tactics is also rewarding researchers who give good write-ups. It's one thing just to be able to have something that's well written in nice order, do this step 1, then step 2, step 3. It's another thing when the reporter actually provide walkthroughs, a nice video of what they did, a nice, like a burp repeater script even. So when you talk about bug bounties, that bounty can be tied not only to the impact of the vulnerability. This is a trivial XSS, or this is a pretty nasty remote command execution, but then even considering here's a 10% bonus, or here's a 20% bonus on top, because you gave us such a nice write-up that a developer could read it and there was no question about what needed to be done.
Yeah. So I guess the other big question is, how do you price your stuff to make it marketable to the point where it would make the anonymous researcher come to you instead of putting it on the black market?
That is definitely more art than science.
Okay.
One of the guidelines, I think one of the best guidelines is tied to impact, meaning rather than just a label, this is XSS, this is SQL injection, this is CSRF, and saying here is your menu. Say more about what's the impact on your web application, or what's the business impact. Is it on something that's on an unauthenticated site? Is it for authenticated users? Does it actually touch brochureware, for example? Or is it touching your sensitive data? Could you steal somebody's password based on this? Now, some of the things, some of those discussions can get a little bit complex as well. And one of the things that's important to avoid is getting into too many variables, meaning something like the planets have to be aligned on a full moon on the second Thursday of the month for this to be exploited, and then game over and I've destroyed your website. Yeah. That's interesting, but one of the things that we've discovered is if you have a good threat model behind it, or if you have a pretty simple explanation that says, these are the 3 steps of exploitation, here's what the impact is on the user, on data, that helps give kind of a range of what the value might be, and then taking that and being consistent over time. So it's one thing to say, here's a $50 XSS versus here's a $10,000 XSS. It's good to have justification, and then it's good to be able to point that over time when there's a dispute, a researcher says, hey, you're paying nothing for these types of vulns. There may be a legitimate reason for that. It could be that the vuln just isn't impactful. And so one of the responses to the researcher can be, there are others who will come and report those and want to earn that $50. Not everyone's going to sniff at that. The other thing can be, rather than focus on this cruft, if you will, of cross-site scripting, which I always like to tease about, there can be like command execution vulns, or there could be a lot more impactful vulns. Go after business logic, and that's where you can get a lot more reward and easily find things that could be a $2,000, a $5,000, or even a $15,000 reward for those types of really impactful vulnerabilities that not everyone can find. So it speaks more to the researcher's skill level, and it speaks more to them being creative about business logic rather than the low-hanging fruit, to pull out that cliche.
Okay. So let's say you're not an Apple, you're not a Google, so you don't have $1.5 million to put a vulnerability out there. Is there a point at which a company, it would be cheaper for them just to hire people to monitor the dark web instead of creating a bug bounty program, because you're not going to be able to pay $50,000 because your application is popular enough that, well, you're not an Apple or Google, but it's, I can't pay $150,000 for vulnerability, but I know that that's how much my vulnerability is worth.
Yeah, and that's where it's always interesting to figure out the price of the vuln, because the organization may pay out like $100 for because that's what they price it, that's what the value is to them, whereas on the dark web maybe it's 50,000, something like that. But I think there it speaks more to Apple, Google obviously have the resources, but also have a massive ecosystem that is a value. Smaller companies just may not be looked at. They may not show up on the dark web as well. And that could simply be because researchers don't care about them at the moment, or attackers don't care about them at the moment. So you don't have that market for them. So in a way, I'd say you don't necessarily have to have that $1 million budget to pay out for bounties. You can ease into it with a narrow scope. Focus on, here's our API, here's our OAuth implementation, here's a particular feature we're launching, and we want to say we're going to, here's our range, $50,000 to $5,000, and explore the waters, see what kind of crowd you attract in terms of the researchers, and then modify as you go. So that would be one way to ease into it.
Yeah, and I guess other impact is, if it's a product you make that affects 500 other companies, then you have to start thinking in the long term of, okay, well, that's not just a $50 vuln, it's, maybe a couple $1,000, because that vulnerability may affect, an Apple or a Google.
Yeah.
So, you have to think about your reputation.
Yep.
And may have to put out for something that starts to get popular.
And that's absolutely true. And the other way to think about it too is you can also consider like a private bug bounty, put some boundary conditions on it. So rather than attract the entire internet, so to speak, say here, attract a few dozen researchers, invite them in, and get rid of some of that cruft, if you will, and also have them poke at it, do sort of that crowdsource pen test, if you will, hit the easier to find things or the really impactful items, reward that, then open up the floodgates and then see who comes in.
Does Cobalt do that kind of stuff?
Yes.
It's Cobalt.io, right?
Cobalt.io.
So you do private bug bounty type stuff?
Yeah, so the platform supports public and private bug bounties as well as crowdsourced pen testing.
Okay.
And there's more of a fixed engagement to gather again, bring in some of the top researchers of that crowd, have them go through a methodology and figure out not only what exists, what vulns might exist in that web app, but also be able to speak to a little bit about coverage, meaning that just because you didn't find a vuln doesn't necessarily mean in terms of a bug bounty, just because you didn't find a vuln doesn't mean that vuln doesn't exist. But when you have a bit more of a pen testing approach and you're going through a methodology, you can hopefully get a little bit better confidence that the vulns were tested for. So therefore, when you say, no, we didn't find this SQL injection or we didn't find this CSRF, that probably means that it was actually tested for and it's not vulnerable to that, rather than just that big question mark when you open up the floodgates and you haven't tested your application at all before.
Right on. So in the last 5 or 6 years, the bug bounty thing has become popular, do you see bug bounty programs becoming part of compliance requirements in the future for companies that create software, create applications, or have applications that they maintain?
So to some degree, there's already like PCI requires pen testing, and and with a lot of companies when they're working with vendors require pen tests or some type of attestation that are you secure? Have you been tested? So I definitely think that crowdsourced pen testing or even the bug bounties can be a part of that. As much as a lot of, especially the bigger companies or companies that can affect, millions or hundreds of millions of people, or are used by dozens or hundreds of companies, in a way, a bug bounty might be forced on them to use stronger language. But imagine, a Microsoft, an Apple, a Facebook, a Google. These are big companies that clearly can have vulnerabilities that be priced highly on the black market. So they're motivated to undercut that and say, we'll work with the researchers and work with responsible disclosure, or work with disclosure that doesn't put our users at risk, is probably a better way to say that. And I think more companies will be attracted to that model in the sense that it's great to have white hat hackers or hackers who are doing disclosing vulnerabilities without putting those apps at risk and rewarding them. And I think that's one of the things, is trying to figure out that, maturing the model. But how do you reward those hackers their work? How do you reward their efforts in a way that's fair, not only to the vendors or the organizations saying that here's a vuln, it's been fixed, but also here's a researcher whose time and effort is valuable, and not just say thanks for coming and we'll give you a shout out in our vulnerability notes. We'll actually pay money for it.
Very nice. Okay. So you're speaking at, hopefully, they're running a little late. So I think the gentleman with the gadgets is on right now. But if people wanted to get a hold of you or your company, how would they go about doing so?
Come visit cobalt.io. Feel free to drop me an email at mike@cobalt.io. Okay. And incidentally, too, I also try to do a lot of speaking. I've done some writing in the past, too. So I also have my own website that I'll advertise a bit here, called deadliestwebattacks.com. Okay. And I always put up all my presentations from different conferences there. I try to blog there about different aspects of web application security, and especially with the underlying theme that security doesn't have to be mystical or magical. It's interesting. There's a lot of fun aspects to it, and I'm a big fan of sharing that knowledge and getting more people interested as well as educated about what security means.
Cool. And are you on Twitter as well?
I am on Twitter. So Codex Web Securum. So I'm a big fan of fake Latin or Latin sounding names. So that's where you can find me. Okay. A bit cumbersome perhaps, but I'm out there.
Right on. All right. Cool. Thanks, Mike, for coming on.
Thanks again. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Right on. All right, so we're here at SourceCon. We're one of our keynote speakers, Ms. Deidre Diamond, and you gave a keynote on
words to eliminate from your vocabulary.
Okay, so words to eliminate, are they important words, or are they words that just have no business in business anymore?
Totally disempowering words.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Absolutely. But.
Single T or double T?
Single T.
Single T, okay.
As you know, I own and operate CyberSN. We're a national cybersecurity staffing firm, and I can tell you that the number one reason people are leaving their jobs is because they don't feel as if their managers really care for them or are paying attention. And the word but is actually a part of that problem, believe it or not. Yeah. Believe it or not. And I'll show you how. So I work for you, and I do a presentation to you, and at the end of my presentation, most likely you're going to say something like, "Thank you very much, that was informative, but I didn't hear blah, 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 see blah, blah, but something." And the minute you say that word "but" to me, my whole headspace changes from being engaged to fear. And concern that I screwed up. And this lack of accountability to words is the number one reason why we're seeing retention being so severely poor in tech and in cyber in particular.
So it's not pay, it's just quality of life at work.
Absolutely. It's two things. And mostly it's I don't enjoy the people I'm working for or with, the culture, and I couldn't change it. And a lot of times that is strictly that cyber isn't taken seriously, nobody's listening, nobody really cares, where it's a checkbox.
Yeah.
And that's a cultural problem, particularly for a cyber person.
Sure.
It's the work isn't challenging. I'm doing the same thing every day. There's no path or vision to me doing something different. There's no career plan. And so it's not money. It's those two things. And what it's leaded to is statistics that suggest, and certainly I see it in my firm, 60% of the folks in cyber are looking for a new opportunity. They're not actively answering ads or searching the web because they know when they do that they're going to get a call from 1,000 recruiters and none of them know cyber, and the chances of them having a job that's right for them are slim.
Sure.
So they're not doing that. However, if in their networking groups or maybe a recruiter that is good, that knows what they're doing, they will entertain opportunities. And so it's not money at all. In fact, we all know cyber is making 15% more than IT professionals. So, yet our attrition rate, particularly at the CISO level, is a massive problem. It's 16 to 18 months. And so, if the leadership is changing, at the executive level that quickly, imagine what it's like to work underneath that. It's very challenging and depressing.
Yeah. So how do we break out of this cycle? Because it appears like everybody who's rank and file now moves up to management, and they bring the same stuff that they tell themselves they're never going to do because of the boss in front of them. How do they end up in that loop of bad managers?
That's
or
a great
bad
point.
Management?
That's exactly what's going on. Individual contributors are being promoted into management positions because they're really good at what they do, and they're not given the training. So we've got two problems. We've got that training doesn't exist, and then what's the cultural environment set at the top to training, to culture, to leadership, to supporting each other, caring for each other. I was fortunate that I worked for the same serial entrepreneurs for 3 companies for 21 years. And that was our slogan: hang together or hang separately, meaning we're no good alone. As individuals, we're there's nothing for us. We are team creatures. And so it must be just like family in that you don't just throw people away. You take them seriously and be accountable for them if you occupy a management or a leadership title. And you get them better, and you get them the resources they need to get better. And you have programs that allow for helping individuals. And when one does that and has a clear vision and path to the company's vision, the environments are electric. Our environments have been called bottled lightning, when people would bring people through our companies to see the energy, to see the VCs to just folks out there running startups that want to show what they want, would literally bring them into our environments to see what was called and labeled bottled lightning, which is energized people. Yeah. People are energized when feel they're supported, and there's a path, and they know what they're going to be doing next, and there's a plan. We all thrive in that, and unfortunately, we have not made this mainstream yet in corporate America.
Do you think corporate America has need of? When I was in the military, there was something called like leadership academies, where you would go once you became a certain level, like a chief or a petty officer or something, and you learned how to. Well, one, it was kind of fit the methodologies of how the Navy works, but is there a decent enough leadership academies? Are there leadership academies that are good for corporate America? And should that be compulsory?
I'm so glad you said that. That was my next point. We ought to model after the government in many, many ways. Their training programs are so clear. You do this, you get this. You do this, you get that. And it never ends. That's one thing we don't have in corporate America. Number 2 is that when you're in government and military, you have the ability to move and change into different groups and different organization lines. In corporate America, somebody finds out you want to do something different, you're done. And so we're hiding, and we can't just put ourselves out there freely and move about. Even in the same corporation, a lot of the times, that's not looked upon, friendly.
Sure.
So not only shall we mimic sort of the training program from day one through one's entire career ought to be mapped out at any organization for anybody that gets hired. If we did that, we would already be, home running it. Sure. If we add on top of that leadership training, which is what you were asking about, that is ingrained, that starts at the top, and everybody has a common language of how they speak in the company. Everybody has a common language around what it is to lead and manage, and if that starts with measurable agreements, they'll be very successful. And are there programs out there? Yes. However, it's not about one program, because the dynamic of leadership is everything from words to policy to vision of the company and what the projects are and how they break down and how they're going to be measured. And so there's lots of training that falls under leadership. It isn't just about how do I have compassion for you. That's one piece. There's so many pieces, and we have come from a manufacturing industry to a tech industry, which ultimately means a service industry.
Sure.
Because as we all now know, there's no such thing as the geeks in the back room locked away. The geeks are running things. They're out supporting things that they're building, and they are required to have the soft skills, and yet we don't have that training. So that's the other piece that's really hurting us now, is that switch.
Yeah. So Leadership Academy would be like ethics training too, probably.
Yeah.
Starting at the top.
Ah.
Yeah. So you do a lot of recruiting. One of the things we recently had Ben Johnson on, and we were talking about issues that we have with InfoSec, and one of them came up was job descriptions.
Yeah.
Yes. Or, the company doesn't know what they want, so they just try to put everything on the same plate and hope that they get somebody who hits 6 to 10, 6 out of 10 of the items. There's a lot of talk that recruiters are kind of part of the problem because they're shotgunning things out to people. I still get help desk, in North Dakota for 3 months type positions. How do we help? Maybe from recruiting standpoints, how do you help companies understand that's not a very good job description?
Yes.
Or
yes.
How do we fix that issue?
As you can see, I'm so excited right now. You're like every question you ask is exactly the right question to be asking. Job searching from a digital job posting perspective is broken. It's completely broken, and it's broken for a couple of reasons. One, you nailed on, which is people aren't taking the time to actually make a job description. They're making a wish list of things that they'd love to have. A job description actually talks about the projects and the tasks that need to get completed. Sure. That's a real job description, not a list of technologies that we'd like somebody to have. Particularly in an industry of cyber where everybody's sort of done lots of things because we're so understaffed, that it isn't about saying, I want somebody that has all these things. It's about saying, here's the projects and the tasks I need to get done. Who's got that experience to come do this? And we're writing jobs incorrectly. Yeah. Number two, most people aren't actually writing their jobs. They're cutting and pasting them off the web. It's not their own work. Number three, we have an SEO problem. Digital marketing has become SEO. That's true. So yes, it's a terrible thing. You've got to at least put the buzzwords 5 to 10 times minimum, right? The keyword searches, keywords in the body 10 to 15 times. And there's 5 to 8 keywords that you have to pay attention to. So now imagine 5 to 8 of those times 10, and how the ad just becomes so convoluted that somebody who's working in cyber, because everybody's employed, and has a life that is very demanding and a job that's very demanding, who's got the time to go through that? So that's an SEO problem. And the invitations that you're getting for jobs that totally don't fit you are because marketing automation is using SEO because you've got cyber and you're going to get every cyber job pretty much. I mean, it's not actually coming from that recruiter. It's all, marketing generated content. Yeah. So that is frustrating the industry to where they're not answering ads, and has already happened. Sure. And so the thing that excites me about this is I saw this day one when I got back in the business, because I went from staffing tech for 13 years to building software companies like Rapid7, and then I went and put the two together. Is I saw this in the very beginning that the digital job search part of what we all are dealing with every day is so broken that I realized I have a way to solve it. So we're actually almost done with a solution for job searching. Can't wait to share it all with you all, because it's absolutely ridiculous that you all can't see every job that you're actually qualified and interested in at your fingertips, because you can do it with dating. And we know the statistics of retention of, even marriage in those dating sites. They're off the charts positive.
Sure.
And so we're going to do it in job searching. Am I the one that's going to break the code? I believe so. So it shall be interesting to follow up with you and see if I do, if we do, my team. So
Right on. So with proper networking and social media, why do we still need recruiters?
Because at the end of the day, you can't find each other easily. That's one problem. Although if we solve that with technology, that piece will be taken out of a recruiter's need to do the job. Number two is there's still going to be somebody that's helping this whole, these two humans come together, get you in front of, the appointment set. What's the culture like, prepping you, making sure you understand. A good recruiter anyways, let's face it. I don't know what recruiters you've dealt with, but let me tell you what we do. We coach. We know everything about the manager. We know their interview style. We even ask them. We know what kind of tests they're giving. Because in our world, if the client isn't interested in giving us that information, they're not interested in filling their job. Because the reality is, if I prep you and you do poorly, then you're not the right person. I don't believe that people ought to be walking in caught off guard, and somehow if they succeed, that means they're the right person. No.
Sure.
No. That means you're actually barely going to fill your job. So with us, what a good recruiter does is all the coaching, so that the hiring manager doesn't have to do that 8 to 10 times, because it's going to take 8 to 10 interviews to fill a job. All that prep work of getting you in front of the hiring manager, ready and understanding enough to make you comfortable, you're at ease, you've been able to predict and deliver what the experience is going to be like when you show up and who's there. And these things matter. We're human, emotional creatures, and there's a lot of anxiety with interviewing. There's a lot of stress with interviewing, and so a great recruiter puts all of that, aside, and then make sure that the offer process is supported to the hiring manager and you, and the onboarding process. Again, we can't bog down our managers in that. However, our managers have to be very engaged in partnership with the whole process and willingness to participate, of course.
Sure.
And so that's why we'll still need them. We ought not need them to find each other and being the right fit easy, meaning you answer my ad and you're actually interested and qualified, versus how many times do you talk to recruiters and you answer an ad where you find out I'm not qualified for the job and or I'm not interested, or both.
Yeah.
It's 95% of the time.
Yeah.
That we can solve with technology. The rest is we're all, there's just work as humans got to talk to each other to get it all done, in terms of starting a new thing.
Okay. Talk to me about Brain Babe.
Yes.
What is Brain Babe all about? I saw it on
So
your
hashtag
banner.
Brain Babe started 2 years ago as RSA was talking about banning booth babes, which we all know. Okay. Yes. And clearly I'm a female, and it really made me take note to say, what are they talking about? And I read the article with my team because they're the ones that brought it to me. And I realized that what everybody was talking about is what these ladies were wearing, which is absolutely a problem. However, there's also a major problem in that they know nothing about the products and services of the booths they're standing at. And somebody that is on the staffing side of it, seeing how hard and how much we are short talent by 1 million people and no women, I thought to myself out loud, why don't they just train these ladies, make them brain babes? Because I'm a liberal arts major that is building software, that was a CEO of a software company, that is not a programming background or a networking background. And so I really believe these women can be trained to be very valuable in our industry. And so I thought, you know what? Let's make them brain babes. And so we went to RSA with shirts that had Booth Babe crossed out and our, Brain Babe on the back and CyberSN down the sleeves. And it just took off in that people really wanted to engage on this topic. The men, who are 90% of the industry, have daughters. They want to talk. What do you do? And then I thought, wow, not only can I be out there promoting training and talking about, cultures and women and attracting, I'm actually going to put my money where my mouth is and start a school, because I just, everybody's talking about it, and I really believe it's possible. And so we're doing, classrooms that are starting off next year. I'm talking to SANS and ISC Squared about, taking our program and sort of bringing them into theirs afterwards if they want the technical path, if these ladies want more of a product, let's say marketing, sales, management path, then I'll take them a different path, and so it's a platform that I'm really giving back to the community. It's not for profit. It's based around human skills training and training in general, and we're going to be also offering the type of thing, talks that I do here into courses of human skills, communication skills, soft skills for the cyber industry overall. So that platform has become that, because they coincide. It's the same content, and it's not just for women or men. It's really for both, and I believe it'll help us with retention.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
they go and they learn about a product, and then the company could use them to augment their sales staff at cons, or?
I think it's more about taking, graduates who know nothing about cyber and teaching them what is cyber, what is the operations center, what are the tools, these acronyms, making them easy to understand, getting them into the concepts of what we're doing, and then showing them all the different roles that exist in cyber and what those people do, and showing them such that they can sign up for what path they want. And then the path they choose, it could pass people off to strategic partnership training, or to a client that's already ready to hire because they've gone through the basic what's cyber, and now they know the roles, and they're, some of my clients are willing to train, and other people are. And so it's really about, setting the foundation for every role that exists in cyber, showing them that, giving them a basic training of it such that they can talk and understand and feel comfortable with buzzwords, because it's not that hard.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. I mean, this is not hard to do what I'm talking about. And then they'll get a feel for all the different jobs, and we can start moving them down the paths to that. It's just, they're not thinking about cyber because they think, like I did, that you'd have to be a programmer or a network IT background. And I lucked out by finding two serial entrepreneurs who are like, no, I'll teach you how to be in tech. While I'm not trained to be a programmer or IT, I'm still in tech and my whole career. So the idea is we've got this gap of, they're not even thinking about joining our industry, yet they're graduating and going and working in Starbucks and Victoria's Secrets and in retail, and they've got big debt, and they're getting depressed because that's not why they went to school. Who went to go to school to be a barista, or even if you're going into management? Not very many people.
Sure.
Particularly these women.
Yeah.
So I want to bridge that gap between you didn't go into tech, and yet you ought to be in tech. And so come listen to what tech is and what cyber is in particular, and the jobs, and then we can push you to the paths of where to go to get the help, because people are out there. There's been a lot of money put into training and not-for-profits to solve this problem. Their number one challenge is getting the interest of who to put in, and then placing them. And so I can bridge those two things with my staffing organization, and we're national and very large and growing every day, as well as I know where the talent is to go grab and bring them into cyber, and that socially just excites me enough to do the work, and my team to do the work to make that happen.
So does training, do you do things like creating proper resumes, or does it go beyond that? Because I do find that I do a local meetup group, and I've been asked to look at resumes sometimes. And one lady was asking about, she was looking for a security PM position. And I looked at it, and I was like, she was talking about PM work, but she didn't have anything about security in there. Yeah. And she was wanting to farm this out to security companies. And I was like, well, you don't have any security stuff in there, so they're not going to look at you because you don't have security stuff.
Sure.
So how do we help with resume generation, or are resumes dead? I mean, it used to be you had to have a cover letter, and then a follow up and a thank you, and all this stuff, and now it's just basically they're looking at your LinkedIn, which is god awful by itself.
Yeah.
But So, I mean, is a resume still something that is useful, or are we skewing that for more social areas like LinkedIn and Indeed and profiles like Monster and that?
The marketplace uses a resume plus LinkedIn. They're looking at both, and they want both, and both ought to be taken seriously because we still are in the era of people take them seriously. So, and it is a problem. People, in terms of writing resumes, it's not who's got that training and who knows if the training was correct. And so, yes, we will, because we will be about career and job placement, or we are about that, we will, touch on that. However, it's a really simple thing. Your resume ought to speak to what you've actually been doing. And as much as you can put in there that's security over anything else, that ought to be where one starts. It's really about what projects and tasks have you done. When you put that stuff in writing, people can read it and say, oh, I know what that project and task is. That's actually a good fit. Versus, some buzzwords or management, outsource, resource, all these high-level words that really one can't figure out if you're appropriate or not. And so the frustration grows, and maybe something else on your resume turns them on, maybe something else on your resume turns them off, and then it's done. You went into one pile versus the other. Sure. However, I firmly believe if the projects and tasks that one is doing now and sort of in chronological order going into the past, people can say, yes, I want to talk to that person very quickly. Okay.
Okay. One last question. So the ladies who are trying to get an InfoSec, where are places in the next 3, 4, 5 years that they should definitely be looking at? Should it be more like PM related, or should they look for pen testers, or where should we be looking in the industry?
That's a good question, because the students are struggling with this. I get a lot of students that reach out to me and say, which way should I go? Should I go the pen test? Should I be an analyst? Should I be in vulnerability management? And I always say, you have to make the decision yourself. You never want somebody else to make the decision of how you're going to spend the majority of your life. So that being said, the name of the game is knowing every job that exists and what those people do and what their career advancement is. And to be able to see that, in fact, I'm publishing that soon on my website because I get asked so much. Imagine if one knows a 360-degree view of every cyber job. Okay, here's the titles, here's what they do, here's what the career advancement does based on what they do. Again, tasks and projects in that language. Then, and where do they physically sit? What kind of environment are they in? What typically goes on in that person's world of career? Then somebody can pick easily. But when we just say pen test or analyst or product management, it's not enough for one to actually make an intelligent decision, and it is part of why people are in the wrong seat because they didn't have that 360-degree view. Again, back to the brain babe, number one, first class, that's it. Let's open the world of cyber and show everybody so that they can choose based on their passion or their interest, and the chances that they're going to be really happy are high.
Right on. Okay, so how would they get a hold of you or your
Absolutely.
website?
So brainbabe.org and cybersn.com.
Excellent. All right. Deidre, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure. Yep. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Awesome.